How's it going?
It's going well. How are you doing?
I'm good. Sorry you guys don't get the green screen and all that because my wife's upstairs hogging the office. So
Welcome to remote learning. So,
you get you get you get the couch, you get the downstairs living room. You don't even get the upstairs. You get the downstairs living room. How you guys doing? I'm Phil, by the way.
Good to meet
yeah,
you. My name is John McMeek, and I'm the principal at West Campus High School. And I'm
How's it
so
going?
appreciative that you're here. So great.
Oh, not a problem.
yeah, and I'm Dr. Elise Verscher. I'm the assistant principal here at West Campus.
Oh, very nice.
Um,
Very nice.
yeah, and so I definitely stole this picture.
You definitely stole that picture. I have no hair in that picture.
But it's such a wonderful picture, and I just thought it was a great way to open up the conversation. I want to first start off by saying, of course, good morning, Officer Graham. I want to extend a warrior welcome and thank you for agreeing to join me and Principal McMeekin in this conversation regarding your lived experience and thoughts as a Black police officer. First, thank you so much for your service as a veteran, and thank you for serving our community as an officer. It is our hope and intention today that we can have an open and honest conversation about what it's like to be an officer and how we can heal relationships between law enforcement and students of color, specifically like our students of color at West Campus who may
Mhm.
be interested in joining the police force, but the perception just may not be there. And so
Yeah.
we're hoping that we can change that narrative today.
Well,
So
that
thank
perception was definitely mine from 0 to age 28. So I understand it.
Awesome. So we'll just go question by question.
Okay.
Principal McMeekin, if you want to take the first one.
Absolutely. So the first question: how long have you been in the police force, and why did you decide to join?
Let's see. So I came on with SAC PD in 2002. Um, like I grew up in New York City. So quickly about me, I grew up in New York City. We wound up moving to Miami when I was in just starting high school. Um, I got out of the military. I graduated from high school. I joined the military. I got out and I was convinced to move to Sacramento by my sister, who was living here with her husband. Okay. So, long story short, I didn't like it here. It was way too slow, it was way too quiet. And, but, I had made a commitment. So I was in school, I finished school, I started my career. I worked for Pacific Bell at the time, which I think is now is AT&T. I'm not sure, it's changed a million times, but I was an electronics technician with them. And so how I became a police officer, basically, I was working in the field that I wanted to work in. Um, and right around the time when I was about 26 years old or so, I started going to church a lot, and it just kind of changed a lot of perspectives of just the way I saw life. I wasn't so much focused on myself anymore. I started to have a real desire to do something else. Being a police officer still didn't come into my mind, but at the time I was also doing music, and so I was traveling around the state. I was traveling around the country, a lot of youth conferences, and the thing that happened to me was that starts kind of pulling on my heartstrings because the young people were really in tune with the things that I was talking about, and I realized like, oh man, this is not just doing songs. Like people want stuff from me, right? And so that pull on my heartstring kind of made it like I wasn't satisfied just going to work every day, just making money. If that makes sense. I know it doesn't sound right, but it just wasn't enough anymore, right? And so I remember I went to a job fair, and I had a slight thought of maybe working probation. That was something I can get my mind around because you work with young people. I was like, okay, because I did see law enforcement as an opportunity, but not as a police officer. Like that was not on the radar. And I remember I was walking down. It was back in the day when they had the job things at the convention center. I was walking down the aisle, and for whatever reason, the SAC PD recruiter, she jumps up out of her seat. She comes around the table, stops me, and starts talking to me. And, you know, I always just tell people, man, it had to be God, because that was not, that was not for me. But I felt a peace about it. It literally was the only application that I took home that day.
Wow. Wow.
Um, I didn't take home not one other application. Went through the academy. 6 months in the academy, I still was like, man, I'm not sure about this. I remember my first week of field training. So it's a long question, long answer, but I figure I might as
That's a
well
good
get it out,
answer.
right? So my all this time I'm still, because I was super militant when I was younger, and this I just didn't understand why I was being placed in this position. And so I remember so 6 months in the academy, my first month on in field training, I'm with my field training officer. We respond to a domestic violence call. We deal with everything that was going on in the house. And I remember dealing with the people that were in the house. And I walked out, and that was the first moment of all these, this whole, 9 or 10 month journey to getting to that point was the first time I realized, oh, I'm here for a real reason. Like, I get it. I grew up in a home where domestic violence was present, so I know that feeling, and that's how I became an officer. It took me 10 minutes to say it, but that's it.
Yeah. It seemed like everything just came full circle and divine intervention, which is
Yeah,
amazing.
it had to be, because I was not doing this on my own. That's just me. I know people, like when I was in the academy, I was actually surprised. I was legitimately surprised by how many people said that this is all they ever wanted to do. It was such a foreign thing to me, being a Black man from New York City. I was like, why would anybody want to do this? Like, I never understood it. But here I am, almost 20 years later, and I was like, man, it's the best thing I've ever done in my life.
So speaking of that, what makes you proud to be an officer?
Man, so many things. Number one, I know what it's like to be a victim. I know what it's like to feel helpless. I know what it's like to feel like, wow, why isn't anybody coming to help me? So I'm very proud of the fact that, especially when you're on patrol on a daily basis, you get to be that person to somebody. Um, I don't know. I tell young people this all the time, but I even like in hip hop culture, you hear so many times, people talk about, law enforcement, prison industrial complex, and all these things, which, I will validate 100%. But at the same time, you always hear these stories of, man, until I got arrested, I would have never stopped. You know what I mean? Like, and so, not that that's a good thing, but you can get a message out of some mess. And
Mm.
so I'm proud that I have been that person in some people's lives. I know people who I've contacted. I know people who have arrested. I've had arrestees tell me, man, you know what? I'm glad it was you. Like, I literally had a guy tell me, he's like, my grandma prays for me all the time, and I know God sent you. It had to be you, And I was like, okay. Also, while I've been here, I've gotten to work in the schools for a lot of years, and I've coordinated 3 different programs in 3 different high schools. I've legitimately helped get hundreds of students qualified for 4-year colleges. Right now, I have students that were my students at Sac High, students that were my students at Grant, students that were my students at McClatchy. Well, not so much McClatchy, because that was very recent, but I have students at Grant and Sac High who have, who came from, foster homes, came from, so many different backgrounds, who got direction in our academy, through our high school academy. Um, they were shown something different. They were able to cling to something different, and now they're doing different. Now they have families. These are grown men and young women who changed their whole lives, and I'm like, And they've told me like, man, it was you, it was you and Mr. Harris, or, like you guys did that for me, because I didn't have anybody else at home telling me the things that you guys were telling me. So I'm super proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that neither one of my daughters have ever had to share a bedroom.
Mm.
I mean, I know that might not be what you want to hear, but like, I don't make a lot of money, but we're comfortable. You know what I mean? I never had my own bedroom my whole life. You know what I'm saying? I grew up sleeping on the foldaway couch in the living room. So, I'm proud to, maybe it's not so much about being a police officer, but just working, just being stable, having a career. So those are the things that I'm proud of. I'm proud that I'm not afraid to bring my whole background into what I'm doing,
Mm.
because I feel like representation matters. I've never chosen this job over who I am. I've not let it change me. And so I'm super proud of that.
Before we transition to the next question for Principal McMeekin, what I want to highlight though is what you said about the programming at schools. The defund the police movement has gained like national traction. And I think the piece that's missing that we don't talk about is the impact that officers make at our sites. And so like you being at these high schools, giving these students direction, being like a father figure for a lot of students, that's the piece that I think society doesn't really see when we have resource officers and officers on sites. And so I want to thank you for sharing that perspective. At Crenshaw High School, my SRO is what got me out of trouble a lot of times, just pulling me aside and giving me that guidance and mentorship. And that's what I heard when I heard you speak. It made me think about my own childhood.
Yeah,
So
I
thank you
think
for
I
that.
think something that people miss about police officers, they're very unique people. They are, and I want to be careful the way I say this, but say like on a school, because I've had kids say this to me. You're my only teacher who's actually doing the things that you're teaching me.
Mm.
And I was like, what do you mean by that? Well, like my English teacher's never written a book or anything, but she's grading my writing. I'm like, but that's her job, or that's his job. She goes, yeah, but you know what I'm saying. I was like, I get it. It's like there's a life experience there. And the things that we see have conditioned us. It sounds crazy to say, the things that we see, I believe gives us a real good opportunity to not see everything in black and white.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, there's, I'll speak for SAC PD. The majority of us have bachelor's degrees. You know what I mean? The majority of people that I know on SAC PD have either done other things before they were policing or doing other things since they've been in policing. And it's a strange person. Like, you can stick us anywhere and we're gonna make it happen. You know what I mean? And that's the same way a good SRO, right? A good SRO is a great SRO. A bad SRO is not a good thing.
Right.
But the presence is invaluable in so many ways.
What's jumped
Awesome.
out to me about what you've said so far is just that you are you, and the job hasn't changed you. The role, the badge hasn't changed you. And you sound like you're so invested in the future of the students you're working in. That's amazing.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I am going to go to the next question. So,
Okay.
what advice do you have for Black and Hispanic students who want to join the police force but are afraid that they do not belong on the force?
Number one is, if it's what you want to do, then you belong. All right. Just from a number standpoint, I mean, departments want Black and Hispanic students. They want Black students. They want Latino students. Officers. If you look at the sheer numbers, right? So even right now, I'm in recruiting, and I'll tell you, if you just look at 100, it takes 100 white male applicants to get one police officer.
Mm.
That's the number. So if it takes 100, and we have no problem getting white male applicants, right? That stigma is not there in that community. These are young men that, like I said, they've wanted to do this their whole life. 100 of them to get one. So now you're going to break that down even smaller to a minority. So you have a smaller volume of applicant in either, say, the Latino community or the Black community. Then you're going to break that down into the even smaller section that are seeing enough past the stigma and the negative interactions to say, this is what I want to do. So now you've got way less than 100 that will even apply. So how many of those does it take to get one? It's huge, and representation matters. So I will just say, you do belong. If it's what you want to do, you should pursue it. And in all honesty, this is the best time to do it because you are standing on the shoulders of giants, right? I mean, we have more Black police chiefs than we've ever had, ever. Right? I know for a fact, we have a Black police chief, and our numbers have gone up in direct relation. Representation matters, right? There's a reason why people fight against these things, because they know representation matters. I will give you an example. I remember I was on patrol, and so if you don't know, let's say, for instance, CPS gets called to a home. So if Child Protective Services gets called to a home and they believe as though there may be an issue where they want a police presence there, right? It doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes. So I remember I was called to stand by on a CPS visit. So we get there, we walk in. So I guess the allegation was that this student was beaten because they had some bruises or scars on them when they got to school. So they did the mandatory home visit. For whatever reason, they felt as though there might be an issue with the parent. So they wanted a police officer there. So I showed up. I stood by, I didn't do anything. My whole capacity was just to be there in case something happened. And I walked around. It was a small apartment, right? In a certain neighborhood in Sacramento. The place was immaculate. It was super clean. But here's the thing. So they had the oven open because there was no central heat in this apartment. It was cold. They had the oven open. This worker walked around the house and started looking at everything, got to the kitchen and starts making these comments. She starts saying, oh my God, there's like no food in here. She got a check on such and such a day. This place should be, full, da 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 da. And oh my God, this is so unsafe. She's got the oven open and da 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 da. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. I was totally out of place, but I had to stop her and say, hey, I don't know. I have no idea about the allegations or anything, but you're making some real leaps as far as this place. I was like, I grew up. I told her, I said, what do you not see in this neighborhood? I said, there's no supermarkets here. I said, when I grew up in a neighborhood like this, where you bought the food that you needed for that day. Because you didn't have the wherewithal to travel because there's no supermarkets in your neighborhood, get a bunch of stuff and then bring it back. So my point is, the reason why representation mattered in that instance is because she viewed that lack as that mother not providing. I looked at it like, that's being a poor person living in a certain neighborhood. That's how you have to do it. You don't have a choice. Right. And I said, and I told her, I said, listen, ma'am, I was like, I'm not going to get into your investigation. I said, but don't put extra on it. I was like, being poor is not a crime.
Oof.
You know what I'm saying?
That was heavy.
I was like, I don't know anything about the abuse, but obviously there's nothing about this place that says it's unhealthy just from the aesthetic of the home and the leaps that you're making as far as how much food I'm like, you could see leftovers in the fridge. Like that's what it is. That's what it's like growing up in a neighborhood like that. You know what I'm saying? So representation matters. I know I've seen it firsthand, even with our chief. He stands up for things that he believes in, arguments that may have never been made if not for his presence, and it saddens me sometimes because I hear people say things about him per se. And I'm just like, wow, like you have no idea the fights that he's fighting. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I encourage you, because if you're not there, who's going to be there? You know what I mean? So
you touched on this. regarding like misconceptions that people have about police officers. Do you want to just dig in a little bit about your thoughts about whether or not you feel the media plays a role in dividing police officer and communities of color?
Man, that's a deep question. I've always looked at I don't know, the media was different, I guess, when I was younger, but I always viewed the media as an amplification, right? So listen, there's reasons for mistrust. We have a long history of mistrust. We have a long history of, police actions not being fair, not being equitable, being disproportionate in Black and brown communities. That's just a fact. You know what I'm saying? When incidents, my only issue is that while you have to validate and you have to accept that these things occur, it becomes very dangerous when it becomes your hot button topic. So for instance, if there is a white officer and a Black suspect, or a Black citizen, it's automatically a racial issue, right? And so then the media amplifies that, and that's all we see. So I do believe the media plays a role. Another example that I'll give you is this. Until recently, the public did not see certain videos, right? Police officers have been seeing these videos for decades. And by that, I mean, when we were in training, when I showed up in 2002, there was no YouTube, right? There was none of that. But every day in training, we saw videos of officers being punched in the face by unarmed people, officers being assaulted and their weapons taken away. We saw those videos that were not available to the public before. So we were trained to view certain things as threats. So now with the advent of body cameras and all these things, now the public is starting to seeing all these events. So if they only, so in the same way that we were only shown this and it trained our minds a certain way, the public sees these things, but it's only when it's, black and white is it kind of broadcast. So I think there just has to be a real level of understanding that it's still the extremely small percentage.
But that's why I think this conversation is so important, because you fill in that gap for people like me and Principal McMeekin and our students, right? Like we see on social media, you can see 10 posts of quote unquote police misconduct, but then on the same side, you never hear the voice or the perspective of the officer.
Yeah,
you're just full of assumptions.
Yeah, I have stats. I mean, officers get assaulted every day, every single day, and it's been going on forever. Now, again, I'm not dumb. I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to say these things don't happen, but I'm just saying there are, if you amplify a small percentage of things, then that's what it becomes for everybody. Much in the same way as officers, we only see, we only deal with 3% of the population, right? But that doesn't mean that whole neighborhood is that, you know what I'm saying? So now you have to really check your biases and things like that.
We have 2 more questions before our final thoughts. Again, thank you so much for your time.
No problem.
This one came from a student, so.
So, student question, the TV show Cops was removed from the airways. Do you think that was a good idea? Was the show helpful or hurtful to how police officers are represented?
Man, you know what? I actually didn't give a lot of thought to that when it happened.
Hey, Charlotte.
I actually didn't give a lot of thought to that didn't happen. So I don't know that I can really answer that intelligently, because I don't know why the network said they removed it. Could you tell me? Did they ever come out with a reason why they removed it?
Well, I'm not sure. I think the meat of the question though is about representation, right?
Gotcha.
Like
Okay.
if you see cops on TV and they look kind of out of shape, they eating 4 or 5 donuts and then they're arresting this drunk guy, that does bring a perception.
Absolutely.
And we know there's the stereotype of the overweight donut eating officer, right?
Hey, don't talk bad about donuts. Okay, Okay, because at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's the only thing that's open. Don't be hating on donuts. We will have no donut slander
I'll
in
get you
front
some
of me.
Krispy Kreme, okay?
Okay. We ain't gonna have no slander over here. Do I think it was a good idea? I guess I would say no. I mean, if the assumption was that it was in response to all the things that were going on in our country, I don't see what removing a TV show really does. You know what I mean? Because at
Right.
the end of the day, when we're talking about systemic racism, there's still people there's still people in all types of businesses and corporations or whatever that are mismanaging their, the diversity in their area. You know what I mean? Man, my wife is in she's in a school district, and the things that I see, that she has to deal with, I'm like, yeah, if there was a TV show about if there was a TV show about principals, I don't know that it would really help her. If
Wouldn't help us
you
either.
know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know that it would really help her in that instance. So was it a good idea? Man, I'm kind of ambivalent. Man, I don't think it was a good idea. Not if that was the reason that you did it, because I don't think it has any effect on the situation. Was the
Awesome.
show helpful or hurtful? That show was real. I mean, there was no script. It was literally just cameras following the cops around. So whatever you saw, that's what it was. They came to Sacramento several times.
Oh,
I
wow.
remember getting out of the way. I remember I responded to a call, and the officer who was on cops, I was like, I don't want to be on camera. I don't want nobody seeing me like for years and years and years. So I don't think it was hurtful to police in any way. It is what it is.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Principal McMeeky, you want to take the next question?
Absolutely. Being an officer looks to be one of, if not the most dangerous job one can have. It is also a very thankless job. Why do it?
Because it's necessary, number one. I mean, if you as an administrator sit down and it said, and in your community it says only 38% of Black male students are graduating, you don't just throw your hands up and say, "Ugh, there's nothing I could do about it." Like, no, you roll your sleeves up and you do the work. Um, and I'm gonna be honest with you, it's not a thankless job, because the larger percentage of the community really loves and supports the police. Like, that's the honest truth. Even in neighborhoods where you would think that is not the case, like, well, at least I do. Maybe it's just my face, I don't know. I get a lot of love, so I wouldn't say that it's thankless. There's not enough, but yeah, I mean, like I said, for the reasons that I outlined earlier, there's so many things to be proud of, and you do it because it's necessary. You do it because you think you can do a good job, and you do it because you understand that representation matters and that you're the best person to be there. So you might as well throw yourself in. And before we leave, I just want to say this, even going back to one of the other questions, listen, it doesn't matter what legislation they pass. It doesn't matter what procedures they change. It doesn't matter what they pass in the Senate or whatever. People are the only things that ever change anything, period. The Constitution has been the Constitution all this time. So either the Constitution is bad, or it's just the people that interpreted it that's bad. It is what it is, right? So anyway, that's why you do it. You do it because you feel as though you can do it better.
I appreciate you highlighting the importance of representation, because to me, having Dr. Verser on our staff has made it so that it's impossible for us to avoid issues. And being, being a white male for my whole life, which is, what I am, I've always had the option to avoid issues if I chose to. I do not have to engage in any kind of hard conversations if I choose not to. Mm-hmm. And it's been a huge benefit, just the representation, just making it so that you can't sidestep things. And I just can only imagine that in your role in law enforcement, to have African American representation in higher level positions just makes it so that you can't sidestep any things that's coming out, you have to address it. You have to talk about it. And just sharing this conversation with you has been so meaningful for me. And I hope that, I hope there's an impact beyond that, though. But even if there isn't, this has just been such a valuable use of my time this morning.
Well, I just want to say I appreciate you being here. It's huge. I mean, you're the gatekeeper. You know what I mean? Like I've never met Dr. Verscher till today. I've never met you, but like I said, my wife is in education, and she's worked in multiple school districts at very high levels, and I know the things that she tells me sometimes. I'm like, wow, like, it's in everything. Policing, it's like we're supposed to be the best of the best, like, and then you see all these ugly things. Or in education, like everybody always says, education is the thing. So like if you don't have that, that eye for equity, you're the gatekeeper for all of these young people. Like, so I appreciate you very much, and I just want to encourage you. So, yeah, thank you, Dr. Verscher, for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and happy Black History Month. Warriors, we hope that you shared in on this conversation. We appreciate your feedback. And again, Officer Graham, you're a hero locally, and thank you for serving our country, our community. I'm just inspired. So thank you so much for giving us your time.
I don't get that very much. I'll take it. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I would love to get a copy of this too.
Of course.
Outstanding.